In our last session, we touched on the topic of investing. When it comes to investing, there are various areas to consider. And today we are going to spend some time on one area of investment, probably the most important area of investment for most of us individuals, which is retirement planning. When it comes to your retirement planning, as an employee, your normal provision, if you are lucky enough to be the member of a pension fund, is made up of two contributions. Generally, your own contribution as employee and your employer's contribution as employer. These two contributions together form your monthly contribution towards your retirement. Your retirement would generally take place between ages 60 to 65. And as luck would have it, in this day and age, the chances of you living to up to age 90 are actually quite good. So your retirement provision needs to cater for about 20 to 30 years after retirement. Now, as I've said, in the normal situation or in the situation of an employer-employee relationship, both of you would be contributing towards your retirement. And that would go into one of two types of funds. The one is your pension fund, the other being your Provident Fund. If you are a member of a pension fund, at retirement you would receive 1/3 tax-free under current legislation in cash, and 2/3 of your final accumulated credit would have to go towards what we call a compulsory annuity. A compulsory annuity is a monthly payment which can be paid to you annually, which is paid to you generally for the rest of your life and replaces your income. So your pension basically becomes your salary for the rest of your life. That is how a pension fund would normally work. Your 2/3 portion, which is paid to you as an income, is fully taxable at the rate of income that would be applicable to you in the financial year of assessment. The other type of pension fund that exists in an employer-employee relationship is what we call a Provident Fund. And how a Provident Fund differs from a pension fund is that at the end of your term, when you stop working or when you retire from the fund, the full 3/3 is available to you in cash, even though 1/3 of it is tax-free and payable to you in cash. The other 2/3, whilst payable in cash, would be fully taxable. When we look at the two types of provision for retirement, a Provident Fund kind of leaves the employee with the responsibility to plan how their funds would continue during their retirement lifetime. So even though you do get your 2/3 in cash, it would be advisable to place those 2/3 in the type of vehicle that would continue to pay you over time, so that you do not find yourself out of pocket in retirement, which can be a huge challenge for many. In fact, when looking at retirement, only about 6% of the population can retire financially independent. It means that over 90% of people would be dependent on government or on their dependents to make ends meet for almost as long as the time that they worked. Imagine having worked so hard for your life, on average about 40 years, only to return home on almost nothing to live. And that is the situation of many. How could we remedy this? Your retirement provision that's provided by your employer will only really go as far as replacing between 60 to 70% of your final income. To make that difference, to make up that difference of about 30% between what you might need at retirement and what you actually have, you have a number of options. Those of us who are not employed have access to what we call individual retirement planning, but it's also available to employees. What do we mean by individual retirement planning? Where previously we spoke about an employer-employee relationship as the basis of your retirement planning, here you get to choose how you plan for retirement. Typically, what we have in the market is what we would call a retirement annuity policy. This policy is an investment policy that can run for as long as required until retirement. How it pays out is very similar to a pension fund. In other words, you would get your 1/3 tax-free in cash, and your 2/3 would go towards providing you with an income for the rest of your life generally. Similarly, your 1/3 is tax-free and payable in cash, whilst your 2/3 must find a house in some kind of investment to pay you regularly. You could choose to have that investment pay you on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, or annually. That investment or that investment portion, the 2/3 portion, is fully taxable at your marginal rate. So retirement annuities are a great way to make up the difference between what you might have accumulated as an employee towards retirement and what you might need, truly need, in reality for the next 20 to 30 years in retirement. Are retirement annuities the only vehicle that one could use? No. There are other vehicles as well. You may well use a unit trust investment. You may use government bonds, which you would have payout at a particular time. You could have them pay out at the time that you are planning to retire. Property is also considered a great investment for retirement. One of the things to bear in mind there is that the older you get, the less you would actually have time for dealing with challenging tenants, etc. And therefore, you might need to think of some interesting and creative ways to manage your investment, your property investment during retirement without placing too much challenge upon yourself. Your retirement investment will probably constitute the biggest investment value outside of your home that you would have as an individual. As you can see, it takes quite some muscle to be able to plan for the golden years where you expect to enjoy the fruits of your labor. It requires you to be critically involved in the investment conversation, clear on your time horizon, clear on your goal, clear on the level of risk that you are willing to take. And here, a word of caution. Many of us have a tendency to invest far more conservatively for retirement because we're concerned that there won't be enough money available. It's important to balance that fear with ensuring that your money actually lasts as long as you do. At any given point of your investment, it is important to have a portion thereof invested in long-term assets that can give you a good return over the long haul. So in the face of competing priorities, you critically need to discover for yourself what is the best way to plan for your retirement. Do you fund your child's post-high school education out of your retirement? Do you take a loan instead? Because remember, whilst you can take a loan to cover your school fees, you cannot take a loan to retire. When it comes to your retirement planning, a delay is truly a denial. The longer you take to start planning for retirement, the less you will be able to accumulate once again because of the impact of compound interest. If you don't get into the market quickly enough, you won't be able to enjoy interest upon interest to help you prepare for the wonderful golden years you will have for the rest of your life. So to recap, remember that about 15% of your income is what goes towards providing you with about 60 to 70% of what you would need in retirement, assuming that you work for at least 40 years and during that time you contribute regularly and consistently towards your retirement plan. How would you make up the difference? By considering your own individual retirement planning, which you could do through the means of traditional products such as retirement annuities and unit trusts, or considering, in addition to the traditional products, investments in property and other assets that can give you a long-term return and support you during your final years, which can be anywhere between 10 to 30 years after you retire. A big aspect people forget about retirement is your lifestyle after retirement. Not many of us are lucky enough to work for an employer where you would still have access to your medical aid fund after retirement. If you are like the majority, you would now need to cater for your medical expenses from your own disposable income. This strengthens the case of the importance of planning for retirement over and above what you might receive from your employer or from government through social grants. It's important to consider your own aspects. It's important to have a look at what your own lifestyle is like. You might have some lump sum payments that you would like to make at retirement. And this is part of the reason why you have this lovely windfall of 1/3 of your retirement plan payable to you tax-free and in cash at retirement. You could use that amount to take care of debt. You could use that amount to take care of some of your monthly running expenses that you would not be able to cater for on a reduced salary that you find you have at retirement. Remember that your investments need to work for you into retirement as well. You'll face a number of lifestyle changes when you finally decide to go home and stop working, or rather to choose the kind of work that you will focus on. In your lifestyle after retirement that most people want to maintain, you need to consider your medical expenses. And if these are not covered by a medical aid that is provided by your employer after retirement, you would need to cater for these expenses yourself. And for most of us, as we age, our health status will decline as we age, which means we'll have more expenses to cater for in retirement. Critically important to plan for these as well. If you are lucky enough to be able to reinvent yourself at any given point in your life, you might want to have your retirement provision to enjoy all of those things that you put off during your working life. Wishing you all the best as you plan for retirement. Always make sure that your money continues to work for you during retirement and doesn't stop when you retire.